stopping things external affect your internal. I feel like you do that very well.
I try. There are days when I definitely don't. And that's going to come back to what we talked about, standards and understanding your cues. When is the point when I reach for a distraction? What are the cues that lead into that? When am I starting to feel overwhelmed that I then look for something to make me feel good about myself? At the more extreme end, it can be, alcohol, drugs.
Alcohol, yeah.
At the lower end, it could literally just be caffeine or cookies or biscuits. A military career is a selfish career in terms of when the army says you are going somewhere, you are going somewhere. Your family has to listen, that has to go first. And also when you don't want to go somewhere. If you're in a bad place and the army says you're going somewhere, you're probably going to go somewhere. And all of the positives, and this is why I'll always promote the army because I loved it, is at all levels of responsibility you get. And we're talking private soldier all the way through to an officer. You are put in position of responsibility far beyond what other qualifications might give or other life experiences given to you. There is less exotic travel than there was in the 50s. You're not going to Hong Kong, but you will travel, you will go abroad, you will go on exercise, you will learn to be self-reliant, you will be given a brotherhood, sisterhood, a community in a way that you will never experience, I don't think, outside of high-level sport. Because if those people want to be there and care about it, they will give you so much value, far beyond anything that you're paying them, because they will feel like they care. And they'll tell other people that they care. The business will be a productive, happy place because people want to be part of it. So that's what we're doing.
Today's podcast is with my very good friend, Callum Davey. It was a storm of a podcast, if I'm honest. It was one of those ones that we could have gone on forever and ever and ever. We have a lot of similarities, and that's why I really wanted to get Callum on. But I also love his views of how he sees things. And, you know, obviously, as you'll see in the podcast, the leadership sort of stand he has with everything he does in life. And you know, everything he's learned through the army and in his life that he's built up to now has become a big part of him and who he is now taking his business on to do as well. So listen to this podcast. It's very diverse in what we're talking about, to be fair, because we're talking about lots of different things, but there is so many nuggets to take away. I really hope that you enjoy it. And as always, thank you very much for supporting us. The feedback again that we've had recently about the last couple of podcasts have been amazing. So we'll continue to bring these podcasts for you. So Callum,
Dean, how are you?
We meet again.
We do. We haven't come from very far, given that we live about 50 metres away.
Literally insane. But I do always say, and I'll always stand by it, we're brothers in a way of like, we know where each other are if we ever need each other.
Yeah. No, I'm
but no, thanks for coming on, obviously. We actually did a podcast quite a while ago in my, I'm going to say office rather than bedroom, because it sounds a bit weird.
Yeah.
But in my office at home.
I haven't slept on that couch.
No. But, we've got a very, and I'll just put this out there now, but we've got a very good relationship in regards to where we've been in life, what we are into, and also I definitely envy your presence and how you are as a person. So I think that's what, you know, really attracts me to how you are.
That's very kind. It's a work in progress, as I'm sure we'll come on to.
Yeah. It's funny, actually, 'cause I've got a few questions about that side of things as well. But no, let's start with a gift, because every podcast at the minute I keep forgetting the gift.
Yeah. So I thought about, and we'll come into my career, I thought about bringing things from my life and then went for this. So it's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning. So he was a German psychotherapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, who during World War II was in concentration camps and Auschwitz. And the book, the first half explores his experiences and the second half explores learnings from it. And the reason that I brought this one is, as we both found leaving the army, with my wife being a cricketer, with a lot of your other guests, the first half of their life is an athlete. And if you are listening to this, you probably dreamt of being an athlete at some point. Maybe you got the chance to do it, maybe you didn't. But at some point, they say athletes die twice because they retire and then they have to find something else. Soldiers, I think, have the same thing. And purpose is what drives us on and lets us live a happy, fulfilled life. And this book explores it in the worst possible, the one to make our lives look rosy.
Yeah, so this goes like deep into it. Is that
very
what you're...
deep, very. It's a short book. It's an easy read. It's a very difficult read, but it is a short read, and explores what is it that led some people to survive, to live through it, to be able to live through it, what caused some people who were healthier when they came in to die first, and then how do you deal with, or how he dealt with it and others dealt with the other side of it, the actual, you've got through the difficulty, you've survived, but is life what you thought it could be? Was it worth living through it? Because lots of people who went into concentration camps came out and their whole family was dead, and they'd lived going, I'm going to see my wife, I'm going to see my children, I'm going to see whatever comes afterwards, and then came out and none of that was there. So dealing with that, so it explored
on top of what already
on top of all the.
Do you know now you said that? I think you've actually told me about this before.
Yeah,
I think you mentioned the book.
It's often sort of people put it in that book like, oh, you've got to read it, and I wonder whether people actually sit and apply it to themselves.
Yeah,
and go like, what is my purpose?
Yeah,
because as we'll talk about, not to prelude it up, we'll talk about it later on. Purpose is the thing that will keep you going, having a reason. And when you lose that, that's when you become low.
You lose yourself?
Yeah, you lose yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I'm going to say to you is thanks very much, first of all. Now, I think you know I'm not a reader, right? And sounds like I'm going to be really suck up to you now, but out of all people, you are one person I will read a book. Not for, because it's for myself, but as in, because I obviously, like, you know, as we talk about, I envy your presence and how you are with things. And I know that we've spoke about things before, haven't we, about, you know, having time to yourself and the things that you do to actually settle you and, what's a better way of putting it, like...
Yeah, relax
yourself. Yeah, relax your mind and stuff like that, yeah. Which I struggle with a lot. So, actually, the fact that it looks quite small as well, I promise I'll get through this book. Yeah. Well, appreciate it, my man.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much. So, I feel like we have a lot of things to go through, so I'm gonna crack on with things now. But let's make this brief, because obviously we've got a lot of deep stuff that that I want to share for people, because I just know how valuable it is for people, and obviously it's what the Lion Mind's all about. But just tell us a brief of, let's go through your journey of baby Callum to,
sure, yeah, so
let's say mature Callum.
So I grew up in North London. I was very like my parents are both sort of professionals. One's is now a judge, but barrister at certain points. My mum's an educational psychologist. I was really lucky. I got sent to private school in North London, and probably the first important one is when I was 13, 14. I did a thing called CCF, cadets. In school, and they suggested I go for an army scholarship, which is officer selection. They pay for your schooling, then they pay for your university, and then you commit to a period of time. So I did that when I was 14, passed, successfully got it. They said, go off and do your thing. At some point you'll be turning up at Sandhurst.
Yeah. Do you then do junior leaders, or do you jump straight to Sand?
Go straight to Sandhurst. So you the way the army works, as long as you've got A levels, you can go to Sandhurst. You don't have to go to university. Lots of people do, but that's entirely a preference. So I went through school and then I went through university going, I will be a soldier at some point, but sort of put it a bit to the back of my mind. So it was always an identity thing. Yeah, education. So I did my A levels, went to University of Edinburgh for 4 years, played rugby, had a lovely time, got a letter saying, we'll see you at Sandhurst in September. Went to Sandhurst, commissioned to the Royal Welsh, so into an infantry regiment, did my platoon command, then went across to, it was called Spec Inf, it's now called a Ranger Battalion, did 2 years as a team commander, came back, did another 2 years as anti-tank platoon commander in the Royal Welsh, and then spent my last 9 months in Army HQ in the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team, and then left to where I am now to start my business. Along the way, played a lot of sport, gone to some lovely countries, gone to some not so nice countries, had a great time.
So how long were you in the army for?
8 years.
Yeah. And I guess, so, just because I don't want to brush past it too fast, but, growing up, would you say you had quite an easy and steady upbringing?
Yeah, I would. I absolutely would. I think I was very, very fortunate enough to be exposed to lots of different things, but I certainly didn't have, compared to some of your other guests, a difficult life. I had very, very kind, interested parents in what I was doing. I said I was lucky enough to go to a school where I was treated like an adult from a very early age. I got to experience lots of different sports, lots of different societies. I got a very broad education. I then went to Edinburgh, which was lovely, but again, it's not difficult. So no, I have had a pretty, in many ways, comfortable life.
Yeah, because it's quite. And I think I said this about another guest, Josh. Like Josh Maley, like he had quite. I don't want to call it easy as in like belittling, but do you know what I mean? Like quite an easy upbringing and a simple, and it's that whole like everything was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
And do you know what I mean? And
yeah, I suppose easiness. I would probably go with easy in terms of like safe. I had a very safe upbringing.
Yeah.
Easy in terms of there are different challenges that come with that kind of thing. I put a lot of pressure on in different ways to excel academically, so I got a scholarship to go to school as well to help my parents out. So I put myself into challenges. I played rugby at a high level, so that was tough, and I'd throw myself into that. But it was a safe environment to do all of the learning, to do all the aggression, knowing that I could come back to a safe, settled home that things other people couldn't necessarily take for granted, I could take for granted.
Yeah. Because I always, obviously, like many things, when you listen to other people's stories and upbringings and things like that, you can't help but then look at yours, can you, and have that little like comparison. And this is no reflection on my parents or anything like that, but I feel like I had a very stressful upbringing. Just down to like my surroundings and everything. And do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, but with you going through, obviously 14 is a young age. Like 14 to 17, 18. That was my like trouble years. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I was getting into a lot of different shit. And it was just the surroundings of the people around me and all that sort of stuff. You didn't really get drawn into any of that, did you? Because you went straight into schooling, I guess, at that, or from school into
pretty much,
into intense schooling.
It's an interesting one that I think one of the things that has made me a grounded, balanced person is that I didn't do everything through school. So rugby for me was my escape, and I played local clubs, I played county rugby. Yes, rugby is a privileged sport, but I was playing with people that didn't go to the same background. When you go to like county rugby, we were going to sort of trials for things. Yeah, it is not just private school, or at least for me, because coming from this is not a podcast to talk about rugby, but London schools aren't all the. My school didn't play rugby. It wasn't one of like the Wellingtons, the Millfields, the big scholarship winning schools. So I went and played my rugby through local clubs. And this is going to sound incredibly patronising, but it meant that I wasn't always around people from my background.
No, so but that's important.
So
though,
and that's what I think was really important, was to go out and
like
understand that life isn't just the bubble that you're in.
Did you know that at the time, ironically, or was that just a reflection? Because
it's obviously a bit of a reflection.
If you knew that at the time, that's amazing, because then obviously that's the reason behind it, isn't it? But a lot of the time, things like that we realise after, don't we? And we're like, I'm glad that happened the way it did, because it gave you that difference.
Yeah, I think I realised that later on. Yeah, I think I realised it quite early on. I don't think that's something that.
No, of course, but as in, like,
I
you
don't
didn't plan
it. I don't think when I was 9, I was going like, oh, this is great, because it's not like that.
Yeah.
No. Sorry.
Yeah. So you went into the army, obviously. You were commissioned, and you had a very, I guess you had a very good position straight away in the army, right? You were a very respected position, let's just say.
You could talk to lots of soldiers, and young officers aren't always respected.
Correct. Well, it's something we said, isn't it? When I think it was a bottle of wine down, and we had a bit of a chat about this.
Yeah, I might have been too by that stage.
But I guess this is actually for listeners, right? So me in the army, looking up to somebody that was an officer that had jumped straight to officer. I mean, this is peer pressure of the people that are around you that are telling you this thing, and you have that automatic, not disrespect, but you have that automatic point where you go, they've jumped to there, they've not earned it. I mean, it isn't that way, because fucking hell, you've earned it in a complete education side. Yeah. So, but do you know, as a I think it's as a new soldier, you used to have like, do you know what I mean, like that wrong. It's a wrong attitude, because of course it's wrong.
Yeah,
you've earned your position.
So we were you were in the engineers.
Yeah.
I was in the infantry. I do think there is a difference in the way that corps respect their officers to the way that
Infantry
respect their officers, because the Sandhurst bit is a Sandhurst bit. Soldiers seem to think Sandhurst is easy, and you talk to any colour sergeant that's at Sandhurst, they're just like, this is harder than I ever thought it could be. So for example, like week 5 of Sandhurst, the course has changed slightly. Week 5 of Sandhurst, you go down and do essentially a 24-hour 36-hour tab across Black Mountains. It's about 70k or something. It's called Longreach, or it was called Longreach when I did it. Week 5, you are sent off in a patrol of 6, I think it's 6, I can't remember off the top of my head. You get given 20 odd kilo, 30 kilos, and just you go to different stands, you command task, and they just leave you alone for 36 hours. There is no way that you could do that with a recruiter Catterick and say week 5 you're going to go off and do 70k. It's just not done. That's something you do on juniors or seniors. So little things. So Sandhurst is one harder than people think it's going to be, but also because infantry officers then go to Brecon, you pass Brecon before you come to battalion. I did 76 weeks of training before I had my first.
And that's the bit that's the fucking hard bit, right? How long that is?
That's a long period of time. So, and yes, you have to earn your respect. And I was lucky going to a Welsh battalion, being a rugby player. The way I look, I'd never had issues in terms of being a junior officer. It helped. I had really good platoon sergeants who had worked with the platoons for a long time before I turned up. That's something to discuss as well, about the pairing between young officers and senior NCOs, and actually that goes all the way through the army, all the way up to Army Sergeant Major in the CGS. That soldiers don't realise that leadership is hard, that being responsible for people is really hard, and that you make mistakes because
it's all
someone
on you.
It's all on you.
But I think a lot of people though get mistaken, don't they? Because they look at that and think, oh, it's the gobshite, it's the boss, it's the person who well, yeah, all right, it might look good from that side, but deal with the flack. Like that's the difference, isn't it? And actually, it does all land on you. And if shit goes wrong, you're the one that's getting looked at, not the rest of you.
And that's why the pairing works so well with a senior NCO and an officer. The purpose of it is that an NCO has been there for 10 years, served for a long time. It used to be, certainly when I first joined, they'd done tours of Afghanistan. That's not the case now, just because of what we're doing, but they had experience, and the junior officer comes in who probably hasn't done anything at that point. But all the responsibilities on the junior officer. The NCO can be supportive because it's not on them. Has a different role, does a different job. It's not just to babysit the officer.
But they're the mature side of it, aren't
they're the mature side. They're the ones that go, well, actually, this is what we usually do, or this is what I've seen, or this is what works, maybe you should try that. The junior officer then goes, yay, nay, it's on them. But that's why the balance works so well.
I always used to laugh because it's really funny, isn't it? Like the junior officer and the NCO, the way that they have their relationships, really quite funny, because obviously I'm looking back to like basic days here, but when you're like, oh, like the officer's big bad one. Actually, it's the NCO's big bad one, because the officer's usually, the NCO is the one that's actually commanding the whole thing. Really, let's be honest. And it's like not literally commanding the whole thing, but I'm talking more basic training. They're the ones that have been through and seen every recruit, this, that, and the other. The junior officer is normally a newbie, isn't he? In that respect. But then their relationship, I always used to laugh at. It's like they're literally like, you're right, boss, you're right, mate, you're right. It's like, what are you calling him? Like, you're calling him all these different names, and actually, like, that's fine, because they're best pals, aren't they? Like,
so for example, my stag do that's coming up that I haven't had yet. 3 of my platoon sergeants are coming.
Nice.
Because it's a difficult one. It sounds very like 1950s to go. It's not quite friendship. It's an odd one because it is still a working relationship. But you are incredibly close. You get to know each other incredibly well. And
are they still serving?
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Really?
Yeah, and I still chat to them. I still ring up soldiers to go, how's it going?
I remember you said that,
it's like I'm godfather to a couple. Like not the soldiers themselves, the kids. Like you have a really close relationship, but it is still a working relationship. And
so, do you still speak to them with that ultimate respect when you see them in Civvy Street? Like,
some of the words.
Obviously, you're not going to get your heels together.
No,
but it's like
they lots of them will still call me boss.
Yeah,
even though
it's just
I try to avoid them calling me boss when I was actually still serving, let alone now.
Yeah,
but there is still that element of like they remember me for who I was, not who I am now, and you do have, it's a relationship that you get used to, and different regiments will be stricter, less strict, all that stuff. But it's a very close relationship, and a lot of what made me who I am now is those relationships with them.
Yeah.
Because of how I was, not necessarily because of what they said or did, because they had their own styles, but by what they did, I was able to be me, and I was able to develop my own style with, come back to safety, that safety blanket of, I didn't have to shout at soldiers very often. To give orders on exercise or that kind of stuff, yes, I shouted.
Yeah, but that's a different...
I didn't, when I disciplined, I was able to do disappointed dad, which suits me much more, because I had the big nasty, well actually they were all smaller than me, I had the NCO to one side who did that, and that let me be me, and that then, that authenticity I think translates to soldiers, because if you are a shouty person and then you try and be kind, they're just like, what are you? And likewise, if you're a quiet, calm, more like me, if I was just losing my rag, can you swear on this? Yeah. If I was losing my shit all the time, they'd know, because it just wouldn't be authentic.
Mate, do you know if you actually lost your, just because obviously I know you quite well, if you lost your shit at me, I think I'd cry, because I'd be like, fuck, he is really.
Yeah, it takes.
I mean that, like, you know,
it only happened in my army career once.
I think I'd be actually. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about this now. I would be so fucking disappointed in myself if you shouted at me.
As a teacher who doesn't shout, when he
No,
shouts,
yeah.
And that was only because those NCOs doing their thing let me be. I didn't have to look after them because they were so good at what they were doing that I could just do me.
Yeah.
And that's really important for a young officer, to work out your style of what leadership is going to be, because it's not the same.
But that is so, let's just forget the army for a minute. That is so important in leadership, isn't it? Understanding how you lead. I think I've said, we've had conversations about this before, I will hold my hands up. I'm not the best leader. I'm really not. And that's why, I'm grateful of everyone I've got around me. That's why, me and Zach talk about it a lot. That's why I give him things to do, and I'm like, please do that, because I won't do that. And do you know what I mean? And but my way of that is actually delegating. That's my best way of being able to, do you know what I mean, lead something, because actually I know that I can't lead it from the front, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and actually that's a great way of leadership. So the army calls it mission command. It's basically like, I will ask you to do something. I won't tell you how to do it. Please do it. Off you go.
Don't.
But the leadership style thing is, so I had it in Sandhurst where in the second, so the way you select a regiment, you express interest. It's like applying to university or a job. They go, we like you, you fit in. I say, I like you, I'd like to come. And then they decide, are you good enough? Do we have spaces? There's a match. Yeah. In my second term, I was playing rugby, and my platoon commander, who was an American, I think he's a colonel now, I don't know what he was a captain then, Captain Coyle, saw me captain the Sandhurst rugby team, and went, I've never seen you lead like that on like exercise. And he was like, that's you. How you lead a rugby team is how you should lead soldiers.
Really?
I was like, that makes sense.
Did that switch for you then?
It did a little bit, yeah. So nice. It helped me understand what I wanted to be. And actually, it comes back to the, if you're a shouty person, you're a shouty person. If you're a quiet person, you're a quiet person. If you try and blend styles, and go like,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Everyone has their own way of communicating and doing so. It doesn't mean you can't improve in other areas.
No, of course.
But you have a basic, and if you try and copy someone all the time, it just won't work. So you've got
with leadership as well, that obviously you have to go through that. It's a bit like training, right? You got to train certain ways until you find a way that works for you, or if you're being coached, whatever. But it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? You're testing things out until it actually fits, and that's the same with leadership, isn't it? Like, I've obviously led lots of things, throughout my life, but I've always, and I hold my hands up to it, I've always struggled with leadership. But I also think that's partly because of the fact that I don't know, I'm so scatty. Do you know what I mean? My brain wants to do 10 other things whilst I'm trying to do one thing, but yeah, I think it's something that I've always seen in you as a very good leader, and a very good at articulating things to get people to do them. To understand how to do things.
Makes you sound a little bit manipulative.
Well, either way it works. Yeah. But like whenever we've gone through things, you break things down in a very good way to understand things as well.
Yeah.
You guys together?
No, God,
No,
no.
no.
We didn't even know each other. We literally, so obviously for people,
assume that.
yeah, no, for people listening as well, like didn't even know each other till what year did?
2020, I think it was first. To tell this is, I think the first time we ever spoke was during lockdown. The first lockdown, I'd moved in with Tam.
Yeah,
I think she'd walked past your garage, and you had a home gym, and
Yeah.
you'd taken kit back from the gym, and you were training in the garage. We'd done the same thing in our garage, and she came around and went, "Oh, there's a really big bald man training in his garage around the corner."
Did you say fat bald man?
I don't know, maybe. No. And that was, and I think we started to talk a little bit in whenever the first one lifted, and you let me, and I came in and trained when stuff was allowed. I came in and trained here a couple of times.
Yeah.
And that was sort of it, and then it sort of started off, and then we saw each other more and more. And
Yeah,
that kind of
I feel like, and I want to say this, it's so funny, and I bring it up. I actually brought it up again the other day to somebody. Who was it? I can't remember. Someone the other day, I literally brought it up again. I bring it up quite often, right? I never forget the time that you was running past the house in a.
It was just plate
Was
carrier.
you had a rig vest on, didn't you? Like a.
I was just doing a weighted run.
Yeah. So so it wasn't army vest then.
No,
I can't even remember.
No.
It was just a weighted vest.
It's just a weighted vest.
You had so just vision this, everyone, right? He had a weighted vest, bold guy, fit, fucking shredded underneath. Not that you can see that, but and then he had his headphones in, running past, and he was doing laps of obviously past my house. Next thing, I will call them idiots. These idiots in the WhatsApp group decided to go something. So obviously, like a lot of places have WhatsApp groups, don't they? Like to, and it's a good thing in all fairness, because it's like when you go on holiday, people on our neighbourhood watch out and all that sort of stuff. But these people started kicking off, going, "Oh, there's a dodgy man running around with a headpiece on."
Yeah.
I think he's I don't know what they said, but something.
So I'm not I'd like to say I'm not a member of this group because
Oh,
I refuse
I
to
got
be.
kicked
My
out,
wife
yeah.
is. So I was in shorts and trainers. For those that know, I was doing the CrossFit workout Murph, which is mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 press-ups, 300 air squats, mile run.
Yeah.
So I was in the run part of that. Shorts, trainers. It's a black plate carrier.
Yeah.
That's it. It was.
Yeah. I don't know. They thought you some, I don't know, terrorist or God knows what they're thinking. Some man's running around with a bomb vest on. But it was insane. And then I remember, I think that was one of the things that made us chat, because I was dying to tell you, saying, "Mate, you need to see this."
Yeah.
Oh, I got kicked out of the group. Sarah's in it, but she's took herself out now because that group's history for us. But cool. So yeah, obviously you've had a great career in the army. You've learnt a lot. Obviously, I'm talking for you, but I just know you've learnt a hell of a lot about yourself and leadership and all this sort of thing. But then, what year did you come out of the army?
So 22.
22.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were still
Mid-
serving
22.
when we.
Yeah, still serving
Met,
first
yeah.
met through COVID. So I was still with the Royal Welsh with anti-tanks at the beginning of COVID, and then my last 9 months was Army HQ. So yeah. last year.
Yeah.
Midway through last year.
And why did you leave the army?
So I actually left the army twice, or I went to sign off. So again, for people that don't know, when you sign off from the army, it's a year from when you say you want to leave before you actually leave. The first time I signed off pre-COVID, I would have been out September of 2020, and there were many factors, and they sort of both link in. But I went back in because of COVID. It made sense. Job officers were strangely enough drying up because no one was recruiting during COVID, so I stayed in a bit longer. In both cases, a large part of it was the way an officer's career path works. So I was very lucky that I got to do 3 commands. Really, then you're looking at office jobs, staff jobs, before you eventually come back, assuming you promote to major to command a company. And it just didn't appeal to me. I didn't want to go and do that. There wasn't the carrot of taking a company to Afghanistan, which is a real for an infantry officer. Is the peak. It's pretty much the peak. Command your battalion, but company command on tour, that's the top.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an option. I was frustrated with the fact that I couldn't join the PT Corps because I was a direct entry officer, not a soldier first.
Yeah.
And there comes a crossroad in the army's life where the benefits of being in, such as schooling for your kids, free accommodation, suddenly mean that your salary is worth a lot more than what you're just paid because of all those benefits. And if you start having kids, you're a bit trapped into the career because you can't just step out with the freedom to hop straight into a job.
Yeah.
And I wanted to start the business that we have started now. So that was a bit of that was why I left.
Yeah, like the last push sort of.
Yeah, it's sort of it's a bit of a midpoint because if you leave as a major, you're not quite senior enough to step into a sort of directorship of a company, but you're also too senior to go in as like a graduate because you're mid-30s, and no one's paying a graduate 80 grand.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult transition. So you sort of end up being stuck, and I didn't want to get stuck.
Yeah.
But I loved the army. And I'd like to make that really clear. I didn't leave bitter with it. I didn't leave because, I mean, there were frustrations, but everyone has frustrations. But I didn't hate it. I loved my time. I recommend it to everyone. But yeah, there were practical reasons to leave.
So there's so many ways people leave the army, and I think I'm the extreme of you.
Yeah.
And it's something that we're actually starting, and this is by demand, isn't it, of people asking? Because I interview everybody. There's quite a few people that have said, "Tell us about you." I don't want to talk about me on these podcasts. That's my thing. But we're actually doing another series called The Real Life Shit. Whereas I'm talking about my life and a bit more in depth, but I'll just splash it over just very lightly for people. But I left the army in a very different way to you. I, in a very short nutshell, fucked up, got myself in a hole, ended up getting kicked out, and then genuinely ended up lying to people why I got kicked out. So that's all I'll say on that, because obviously I don't want to take over this podcast with my stuff, but I came out in a very negative way, and actually it wasn't the army's fault, it was my fault. It was because of how I was and stuff. But obviously you came out in a very, well, it was your decision, wasn't it, and all that sort of stuff. But tell us, like, you know, obviously in quite short, but like the pros and the cons of the army, because one thing, and just to throw in there, one thing that I always used to say to people when I first started coaching people, I had quite a lot of people that knew I'd been in the army and stuff, and I was like, oh, you know, I want to get in the army. Can you get me ready for the army? I was like, cool. And I had this. I always used to say, why do you want to join the army? Yeah. And you know, just to literally know. I mean, obviously, you know, there's so many different reasons why people want to join the army, but I always had this thing about asking them to understand about it, and then obviously they would always ask how the army was, but I never gave my opinion about the army, just because, you know, it was my opinion and it's not how. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The army is such a great career. Yeah. But at the same time, it could be the career that people don't want, can't it? Because it could be too swallowing and.
Yeah, and I think if you're saying sort of negatives, this is less a negative, more just a statement. A military career is a selfish career.
Yeah.
In terms of when the army says you are going somewhere, you are going somewhere.
Yeah, your family has to listen.
Your family has to listen. That has to go first. And also when you don't want to go somewhere. If you're in a bad place, not necessarily clinically bad place, but you're not in a great place, and the army says you're going somewhere, you're probably going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And that takes a bit of getting used to. But it's not always a negative, it's just a statement. All of the positives, and this is why I'll always promote the army because I loved it, is at all levels of responsibility you get, and we're talking private soldier all the way through to an officer, is you are put in position of responsibility far beyond what other qualifications might give or other life experiences given to you. There is less exotic travel than there was in the 50s. You're not going to Hong Kong, but you will travel, you will go abroad, you will go on exercise, you will learn to be self-reliant, you will be given a brotherhood, sisterhood, a community in a way that you will never experience, I don't think, outside of high-level sport, because you will live with people all the time. You'll get exposed to different cultures, different ways of doing things, accents, languages, the whole thing, and you'll also be tested. And I think that's something that's sort of a dirty word at the moment, is to be put under pressure. People don't want pressure.
It's needed.
But it's needed, I think, and I think it's crucial to developing any kind of fulfillment later, is the ability to know. Sorry, I'll go on a tangent. I think to be happy in life, you have to build a bank account of self-trust, of knowing that if I say I'm going to do something, I will do something, and then you can believe yourself when you say I'm going to do something down the line. The army gives you essentially a career in which you'll constantly be adding to that bank account of put in hard situations and then develop it and trust that I know that I can do because I have done. And that's what you leave the army with, is a sense of, I've been put in difficult situations, I've come through those difficult situations, I can do that to anything, I can apply that. That's why veterans tend to be very successful in second careers because you've done something hard already, so you know you can do something hard again.
Yeah, and I guess it tests you to understand if you're that person or not. And if you're not, you get out the army and you do something different anyway.
Yeah.
So it's, I think that feeling of like you say, the brother sisterhood sort of thing, you can. I'm sure some people will disagree or whatever, but I just don't think you can replicate that, can you? It's such an amazing feeling, isn't it? You know, that whole like it's like we've always said it, right? And we don't see each other as often as we probably wish we could, but it's ridiculous because we live a stone throw away from each other, but busy lives and all that. But it's one of the things, isn't it, where like, and I mean it when I say it, like if you ever rang me and said I need you, I'll be there. And not only because of the army thing, but it is an army thing to a degree, isn't it? You know, that feeling of like you just know that guy will help. Yeah,
because there are very few things that are directly comparable in life with other people, whereas the army. So, for example, infantry officer turns up at a battalion. You have done the same fan dance as every platoon sergeant. So there is an automatic. I know exactly what you've done. I know you've done it. We've done the same thing together. What you've been through, we'll go and do the same thing. So you automatically have that bond. We didn't do those things, but we did. We did pre-deployment training.
Yeah.
We went to the same training exercise, training areas. We've been on the same ranges. We fired the same.
I guess as well that's the bit that people just don't understand, do they? Unless they do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You know, like just generally, like when you look at, you can look at it as rugby, can't you? Because you always say about it, like rugby, they have that same thing, don't they? Like we all get smashed in the face. I've never played rugby to comment about this, but I know the drill. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing, is it? When you've done that, and when you've done something else along the lines of that person, you just have that ultimate respect, don't you? To say.
And so sport gets, as you say, with rugby. You talk to any boxer. Boxers respect each other outside of press conferences for exactly the same reason.
Yeah.
The army layers on top of that. You've worn the same uniform as well. So not only is it I've done hard things, you've done hard things, but we've done hard things in the same aspect, for the same cause, in the same direction. And that's what increases that kind of that level, and the traditions that come with it, the language for certain words. I still use rag and clip and all of those ones, that you understand that. You potentially don't understand that. But you might have heard it, but that's it. There are words. My battalion, for example, when you talk about like treats or like sweets on exercise, for some reason calls them stims. No one else calls them.
I've heard that, but I've not.
No one. But that's like, that's a thing that we do. So there's a Royal Welsh thing before an amalgamation. Royal Welsh Fusiliers. There's a thing that we wear on our uniform called the flash. And it's essentially a bit of cloth on the back of the uniform. I won't go and explain the whole thing, but it means a lot to us. Royal Welsh Fusilier soldiers used to have that tattooed on their neck. That is a very unique thing to them. That will always bind you into a shared history, into a shared heritage. So for us, because we were in different bits of the army, we use the army as our shared heritage.
Yeah, of course, rather than the individual.
But in your, was it 2-9?
No, so with engineers, But like the thing that I always used to think about with the engineers. Well, engineers always had this thing about we teach everyone in the army. You know, obviously you've got all the different trades within that. So everyone used to always have that, and it's like, but we'd always used to have a thing about all the other, like the Remy, and people like that. But you'd still have that connection with them. Do you know what I mean? But it was always like that little, like more of a, I don't know, like, it was like an arrogant upper
100%. And I'd be absolutely lying to you if I wasn't telling you that the infantry look at the engineers and go, I think you're pretending. Of course you do. But that's what we do. And then even within the infantry, you'd look at other infantry battalions like, everyone has that, and it's that rivalry that then comes together to look outward and go, well, you don't understand that. Like the army versus the RAF, or the Navy, and the Navy look the Navy senior service will look at the others. Like it bonds you together into something. It makes you part of something bigger. And that's and
ultimately, overall, everyone has that respect.
Between the different services. Well, I mean, the big ones function. So, Navy do ships, RAF do planes, and we do walking. Outside of that,
the army dig in, the RAF go to a hotel. But that's the shit talk you have, because it's.
But I mean, actually they do, and that's I have a very serious complaint about that when I was flying back from Belize. So flying back from Belize, two companies of infantry, and there were some RAF Reg soldiers on as well. 5 of them, they got the entire front third of the plane. 200 odd infanteers had the back 2 sections of the plane. Land in Jamaica. It's a mandatory RAF pilot thing that they get to go to a hotel. So they all wheeled their trolleys off. All the infantry slept on the tarmac, and then got back on the plane to fly back to the UK. Like, I'm just bitter because the RAF look after their people more. But that all ties into.
They have a good role, because you probably wouldn't have got there if it weren't for them.
But no, exactly, and that's.
Don't shit on the rest of us.
No, but it's just there's a real cultural difference into it, partly by nature of what. So, with the RAF, for example, I don't know a huge amount about how they sort of train, because they've only ever just flown me places.
Yeah.
But because they have a culture of a pilot is the owner of the machine, but everything else comes in under the machine. Their officers tend to be, not always, warrant officers also pilot, but their officers don't lead in quite the same way that like an army officer leads, because their thing is tech, our thing is people.
Yeah.
So everything's built around like the pilot, because without someone that can literally fly the plane, nothing happens.
Yeah.
So their culture is a bit based around that. Same with like the Navy. Again, it's still a people organisation, but it's a tech-based thing, because I mean, I don't know how many billions the aircraft carriers cost, or like a frigate or destroyer cost, but they are a tech-based thing rather than a people-based thing, and that shapes it.
Every one of them has to be battle ready, or is one better at combat?
But they all play different
things. So and it will all depend on like what the conflict is. Like if you want to use World War II, like all-encompassing war, or you want to use Ukraine-Russia, is largely a land battle, but there is still a naval element to it, because you've got sort of trying to cut the bridges, and you've got naval drones. It's mainly land, because the Ukraine don't actually have that much of an air force. They've got both of the armies are pretty sort of infantry heavy or land-based heavy. If you went to like an Iraq, the Navy's doing nothing.
Yeah. In
terms of ships, because
that's where the amphibious come in, eh? Do a switch of both.
So then they won't be used in quite the same way. The RAF is doing tons. Obviously, it's predominantly a ground-based one.
It depends on what the war is.
Yeah. If you're fighting like a sort of total war or a complete war, all arms war, then yeah, they'll all play a role, because that's their function.
The smart part is remembering that you are one team. They're all, as much as like there's banter and stick between all of that, ultimately you all work together, right? We need you at that point, you at that point, you at that point. Right, so when you left the army, obviously you I want to say but I don't think every person struggles, but so many people struggle leaving the army for some reason, whether it's big, small, whatever. Mine were probably self-made and that sort of thing, and but with you, obviously, you left the army in a very good way, and however you want to word it. But you also struggled, didn't you, with the adapting to civil life and stuff. So tell us about what happened.
Multi bits of it. I think part of it is to do with the book that I brought you. That I dreamt of, or at least being a soldier had always been something that I'd said when I was 14, 15, 16, 17. It's like, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing at university? Like, oh, well, I'm going to do archaeology, but I'm going to be a soldier. I'm going to be a soldier. And I joined the army, found I loved it. And then I was a soldier all the way through. And then you come out the other side and you're like, I am not that person anymore. And I think I tied a lot to the army, and I thought that I knew that. And I thought leaving I'd be okay, because I knew that I'd attach an identity to it, that I'd be out the other side and I'd be okay. And I wasn't. I hadn't worked that out enough in my head of what it was going to be like when I wasn't Captain Callum Davey anymore.
Yeah.
The other bit of that was, lots of officers will go down the stereotypical route of consultancy. So they'll go to like a KPMG, an EY, other consultancies are available, and they'd be around lots of people still, and also quite a good military community. Lots of those companies look after their veterans, do veteran events. You go through like a military transition thing. So you're still around people like you. So it's almost like it's a nice stepping stone out. I went straight from being around people to at home with a laptop, a very cuddly Labrador, trying to start a business.
Wants to lick your face.
Wants to lick my face, yeah. He's not a great work companion. But I sort of had like sort of like going cold turkey on drugs. I went from everything with people, culture, all that kind of stuff, to doing something I had almost no idea about.
Yeah.
And that transition was quite a shock, from being sort of part of something to at home. And that was probably the biggest thing. And I've had to work quite hard to build up.
In a sense, I guess that was going from having a purpose to not quite having a purpose, because that was building up to your new purpose, but it wasn't there yet then, was it?
To not having complete clarity.
Yeah.
And the thing with sports and the army is you often get immediate feedback. You go on exercise or you play a match, goes well, goes badly.
Win, you lose.
You win, you lose. Do this, don't do that, train this. It's pretty instant feedback. Starting a business is not instant feedback. You have to do things down the line that you hope in 6 months' time will pay a benefit. And that's quite hard when you do it on your own without someone to knock it. Like, as I said, I'd love to work with you as well. But if we were sat here working together and I can go, oh, Dean, what do you think about this? Or, you know what, I'm not sure about this. What do you think? And I didn't have that. I was at home basically talking to a mirror going, I'm not sure about this. And then the face back in the mirror was saying exactly the same thing. And that was quite tough. So that was something to work through as well.
And I guess as well, if you think about that, you've gone from a full commanding job that's your life to something that, you know, it's literally the flip opposite, isn't it? Like, you know what I mean? Everything is all on you now, and also it's not even a business yet because it's all, you know what I mean? Emotion as opposed to in play. Yeah. And that. Yeah, and I'm still. It's tough, isn't it?
Lots of podcasts I listen to, people come on and it makes it sound like you have absolutely all the answers and all the clues, and like, you know, I'm completely sorted. And to anyone that's listening that is thinking about starting a business or has got an idea, none of us have a clue all the time. We all have days where we go, I've got no idea what I'm doing today, or self-doubts, and like, you constantly have those. I'm sure you do. I definitely do.
Yeah.
And it's just about building a framework around you, so the mindset to go, you know, it's okay to do that. Now, part of that is outside influences, getting support from people whose opinion matter. I think I watched a clip from Simon Sinek saying you just need one person to love you and say I support you, or it's you have your own internal system of recognizing cues. What do I say to myself when I find myself going down a rabbit hole or doubting myself?
But again, all that doesn't come straight away.
No.
And that's the slippery sort of like side, isn't it? Because, you know, I'm experiencing things at the minute in my life that I've never experienced, and it's like, why am I doing that at 33? Yeah. But actually, it's like, well, that's life. You know what I mean? We're always changing. The world's always changing. You know, it's a chasing game ultimately, isn't it? But I think something that I want to say with what you've just said there is, this is for people that are listening. Like, when you feel like you know them days where you like, because like you say, everybody has days where they go, fuck, I've lost the plot today. Yeah. I had a little meltdown the other day to you, didn't I? You know, and I have meltdowns quite often, and it's like when people say, oh yeah, but your business is so good from the outside. Thanks for that. I'm glad that you see that. But you don't see the other part of it. But I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I could say to anyone on, you know, in that sort of like field and feeling is just do what you think is right. Because when you start to procrastinate and not do something, that's where then it actually slips. You've got to at least go with your instinct, your gut, or your friend, or whatever decision is going to make you move forward. Do it and fail rather than not do it.
Yeah, I think, and what I'd add as part of that is, so what I've started to implement more of is having standards, essentially a gold standard and then just a standard, and that's saying the minimum of what I will do in a day or a week or a month is this, and then this is the gold one. This is the gold. So let's say, so gold one for me is I will do 10 training sessions, which is a mix of jiu-jitsu, sprinting, running, lifting. I will eat like this. I'm not going to go through all that because it's just reference to me. I will sleep this amount every day. I will do this amount of work blocks. That's gold. Well, life will get in the way. So I've got a lesser session, which is I will do a session of movement every day. I might not get everything in, but I'll get something in. I will at the very least have this much protein per meal and this much fruit and veg per meal. At the very least, I will sleep this amount. At the very least, I will do this. And it goes back to my building trust in myself. But that's the thing that keeps me level. It's saying like I will hold myself to account. I will have a minimum. But for anyone that's listening, it's not my minimum. It's your minimum.
Set a realistic
goal. there's no point coming here being like, my gold standard, if I'm inactive, my gold standard is I'm going to do 20,000 steps every day. If you're only doing 2, you're not going to do that. And you might do it one day.
Gold.
That's ultra gold. Yeah. You might do that one day, but don't start now. If your average is 2, that's your standard, and then make 3 your gold or 4.
Plus, as well, with that, because that's a wicked theory what you're saying there. I do something similar in a different manner, but like, what you've also got to remember there as well is when you're, getting all excited and setting these goals and this, that, and the other, you may be in a fucking great place.
Yeah.
And you may go, you know what, I've done this, and this week, so I'm going to make sure that's my baseline. And it's like, hold on a minute, pal. That's probably you working like ultra speed.
Yeah.
And again, not to just go on about this, but all winners have shit days.
Yeah.
Like people just look at winners as winners all the time. No, they win in the end, but they don't win every single day.
So I think about it, let's say those 10 training sessions. So I said I do 4 jiu-jitsu if I can, I do 3 lifting sessions, and the other 3 are running, swimming, sprinting, something like that. If I have 3 good sessions a week, I'm happy. I'll probably have 4 that are fine, nothing to write home about, I'll do all the work, but I won't feel wonderful. And I'll probably have 3 that I want to go home, I can't be bothered, I'll just skip the accessories, they're not great. That's fine. No one is having 10 out of 10 every week. Or maybe you do, maybe you have 2 weeks that are 10 out of 10, but then you understand that you might have a couple of weeks where you're just like, oh no. And that's where I think people fall apart, is they expect everything to be good or perfect or right or I've nailed it. So for example, with the business, it's gone through numerous iterations of, we're trying that, we didn't try that, we like that didn't work, company want this, company want that, to what we're going to be launching properly in October. But it's never going to be perfect.
No.
And if you talk to any of the people that make business unicorns, it's almost never their first business. It's their second, it's their third, it's their fourth. It's they've done other things first.
Yeah, they've tried and failed.
They've tried and failed, or they've tried and it's been okay, but it hasn't been great. And then they've stepped into like, okay, well here's the idea. I've learned how to execute it, and I've got a great idea. Me, for example, where I am now is I've got a great idea, obviously biased, but I didn't know how to execute it, and I've slowly been working out how to execute it because I'd never done business before.
Yeah.
I'm waffling.
Yeah. No. The thing is, like, all that's it's important, isn't it? Like, that's your new journey, if you want to call it that, isn't it? Like, because, I've had multiple businesses, multiple systems within the business, still learning because you just do. And also, you got to remember that shit changes. Like, people change. Like, COVID obviously changed everything.
But I saw how quickly you were able to set the podcast studio up, because of everything that you'd learned from all the other businesses. You went straight into like, okay, I need to talk to this person, I need this, and this, and you did it in like a week or something.
That's just
I could not
obsessive twat.
No, it's not. It's because you've built up a base. I couldn't start a podcast in a week now because I haven't built up all of those bits along the way.
Yeah,
I would work out how, but it would take me longer.
I believe you could.
Oh, I absolutely could. There is no question I could, but it wouldn't be in the way that you've done it.
Yeah.
Likewise, there are things that I could do.
But it'd be your way, my way.
Yeah. There are things that I could do next week that would take you longer to do because different experiences.
Like read a book.
Probably going to take 2 weeks to read that one. No.
How long? 2 weeks?
No.
Fucking you're laughing. Yeah, that's about 2 months, mate. I think you think very highly of me to say that.
I do.
But no, and all those learns that we go through, like, are forever things that are going to happen, aren't they? So we just need to. I think something that again that I love about how you approach things is understanding that shit happens, you're okay, and you need to constantly ground yourself. Don't need to be like, I'm okay. Everything around me is the whole adapting, in that sort of side of things. So, following on from that, then obviously something that I want to dig into with you, if I'm honest, selfishly, because I'm learning this now, but I also know a decent amount about it, and you've explored this, but also for people to listen to, like, because I think it's something that's so important to so many people to understand. That that feeling of grounding, of feeling that nothing on the outside affects me. I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? Regardless of what's happening.
Yeah.
Just feeling like I'm okay. And just to share a little thing, personally of myself, like, I'm going through this at the moment because I feel like I need something to remind me that I've not really rehearsed to think how to say this, but basically I need something to remind me that to continue what I'm doing is okay, and that I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? And the pressure that builds up is just normal. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because, you know, the busier I get, the more people I work with, the more under demand I become. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
You know, as you know, like I've got ADHD. I've only just recently found out, but since finding out, it makes sense to so many things of why I feel the way I do, and blah 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 blah. And actually, it become very swallowing to me, and that's why I want to learn more about the sort of like the grounding aspect of, you know, my therapist actually said it to me, and we've got her coming on the show soon. But she said it to me the other day about stopping things external affect your internal. And I feel like, please forgive me if I'm not 100% right, but I feel like you do that very well.
I try. And it comes back to what I said before about like when people come on a podcast and they're like, oh, this is the answer. There are days when I definitely don't.
Yeah.
And that's going to come back to what we talked about, standards and understanding your cues. I.e., like, when is the point at which you reach for when is the point when I reach for a distraction? I go, oh, like, I love a Lane Norton YouTube watch.
Yeah.
Or my favourite one at the moment is Mike Israel from RP Strength.
Yeah.
That's my distraction. What are the cues that lead into that? When am I starting to feel overwhelmed that I then look for something to make me feel good about myself?
Yeah.
Which for some people it can be at the more extreme end, it can be, drugs.
Alcohol, yeah.
At the lower end, it could literally just be caffeine or cookies or biscuits. Or what is the comfort blanket that you've set up for when things start getting overwhelming? And I think it comes back to two things. One is the external. It's building a support network around you to go, no, it's okay, to provide you with that safety. But from an internal one, I think it starts with, what are you doing on your good days to get better at the mental side? Because we wouldn't say you're going to have a PR deadlift session when you've slept 2 hours the night before. You have a good deadlift session when you're fit, healthy, rested.
Yeah.
So there's an army phrase that's used elsewhere, like, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your training.
Yeah.
A lot of the time for all of us, we go, I need to be mentally strong when I'm tired, weak, frustrated, angry. Well, it doesn't work like that. You revert back to what you've built up when you're being overwhelmed. Yeah. So what are you doing when you're on a good day to train for when you're on a bad day?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
And that's when, so for example, I'm trying to do a lot more of meditation. So not allowing myself to be distracted by things, to try and work out what I say to myself when I'm in those good times. Because if I don't, when it comes to bad times, I will go to myself, oh, you're a piece of shit, you should have done that, you should have done this. And should is going on to another tangent, should is a dangerous word because it implies that you are
failing at what
you're failing, that you are, I should be as successful as, I should be good enough to.
Yeah, why should you?
Why exactly. So it's, what are you telling yourself in the good place? Like, how are you reinforcing when you're in a good mood, when you've had a good day? How are you reinforcing your mindset then? What are you doing? How are you looking after your self-care so that when you come round to the days when you feel overwhelmed, you've got a bedrock of confidence in yourself?
So simple, but I just always refer to kids when you think about things like that. It's very much like, obviously, you know, Leo's quite crazy. It's very much like when he does do really good things. That's why I make sure I praise him for it, and that's that same
exactly
situation, isn't it? Like, when you do good, praise yourself for it. Don't just look at it when you're in a bad place.
We sort of, and I've been thinking quite a lot about learning recently. So how do we learn things? And we sort of think like we almost like leave school and we're like, oh, we're not a child anymore. We're still a child in many ways, and it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
If you only ever shouted at a child, you are not going to have a well-balanced, confident, happy child. You're going to have an angry, sad, disruptive child.
Mixed emotions, yeah.
Who doesn't know where to be, and you're exactly the same to yourself. If you're always punishing yourself and you don't trust yourself and you don't love you, self-love is obviously a very big topic in itself. But you've got to build trust in yourself so that when you have that bad day, when you feel overwhelmed, you can look back and go, okay, I can feel myself becoming this. These are my cues. I start doing this, 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 and this. What am I going to do about it? How am I going to look after myself now so that I don't spiral?
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that I personally have always struggled with. So, like, you know, like, something external that takes over my thoughts. Do you know what I mean? And then it's something that then makes my day worse.
Yeah. So there are many ways. One is the prelim is how are you talking to yourself, preparing yourself, what are you saying to yourself before? Then there's the in the moment, how are you going to snap yourself out of it? And that's working out. So for me, and I think for lots of people, would benefit from movement. Go for a walk, go outside, do some press ups,
You've just got to break the pattern.
You've got to break the pattern.
That's how I was looking about it. Yeah.
You've got to break the pattern. Now, movement helps often because it's hard. You get a sweat on. Like you feel productive from doing something, and then you set that sense of, I feel good about myself.
Yeah.
But just do something,
Yeah.
something productive. So, if you have a goal or something in mind that you want to get better at, break that down into a 5-minute thing, and then have that as an option. So it could be if you wanted to learn French, for example. If you find yourself spiraling, learn some verbs, learn some nouns. Like, have a thing that for 5 minutes you're going to do, and that's going to make you feel good about yourself. Because otherwise, if you're going to fall back on your cookies, your YouTube videos, and you are going to feel worse about yourself, guaranteed, because you've let yourself do something that you didn't want to do.
Yeah, well, you in the back of your head, you know that was your downfall, wasn't it? Like, that's something that you've fell into as
if you've
opposed
got
to
something
controlling.
positive, something that is a net positive for you, whatever that is, that can break the cycle, and then we just get back into that. What are the minimum standards of what you're going to try and do in a day?
Yeah.
And then hit those, and then you can go to sleep going, okay, well, it wasn't a great day, but I have a net positive. And the more net positives you build up over a week, a month, a year, that's when you put yourself in a good place.
Yeah, yeah. Well, something obviously like that you now, I want to talk about your business, because this is something that, from literally everything we've spoke about, is probably most of the reasons why you're doing your business venture, isn't it? Like, it's all about. But explain that and explain who it's for and what it is.
Thank you for the plug, and thank you very much. So, what we're looking to bring is to build cultures for Series A startups, and where that came from was particularly during COVID, and we saw understanding our backgrounds through sport, through the army, had all the support around it to live in a great culture, a culture that's lasted years beyond your service time, but also with all of the support around you to be healthy, to look after it, people who are going to ask after you and check on you. And then looking at normal people going through the pandemic, going, well, who's looking after you? Like, you're getting your nutrition advice from the One Show, or the Daily Mail. You're going on, like, doing a house party. That's where you're getting your support from. Going like, that's not good enough. Like,
it's not a high standard.
It's not a high standard. Soldiers struggle, and you're living with your friends all the time.
Yeah.
Soldiers are unfit, and you're literally training every day, and there's a gym on camp, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be fit. So if those institutions, if elite sport and the army can't always get it right, how do normal people possibly, or how do businesses create good businesses when they don't have those support or they don't have that background? So what we do when we create this culture is we go into a company, these Series A's, and say, where are you now? And we've got an audit, we're bringing online, it's a cultural analytics tool that we've developed with some of the psychologists we worked with, amongst others, England Rugby, British Cycling, Saracens, and essentially we do an audit to go, where are you now? Where are your people? What is your culture? What culture do you want to be? Like, how are your people doing? Because it's stressful being a startup, very stressful. Yeah. And then we say, okay, well, this is where you're at. Let's fix that, and we do that through workshops, courses, individual lectures, and also just personalised packages for individuals. So for an individual, that would be, Dean, you need a psychiatrist, you need a PT, an S&C coach, a you name it, we've got it on our roster, and then we provide that at cost to the business. So it's the idea to try and create that athlete soldier package for a company, so that the end result is a clear and coherent culture, teams that are well led, good communication, employees who feel valued, and employees who are mentally, physically and emotionally resilient because they're looked after, because they know the purpose of the business. There are some wonderful businesses. So there's the famous story about NASA, when someone was going around and they asked the janitor, what do you do? And he's like, I make spaceships. Because he was bought into the culture. He felt valued. He felt like he was part of something. Lots of people don't experience that.
Yeah.
And the companies that I love, or the ones that really transcend, get that. People feel part of something bigger than themselves. Why did we love the army? Because we felt part of something bigger.
And you're proud to say it, aren't you? Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
So
but that's so important, isn't it, to understand in business? Because so many businesses just don't get any of that, do they? You know, and it's like, no, you are the janitor, like you say. Yeah. You're the janitor, keep your nose out, we make the decisions. Yeah. And that's the attitude that
it's remarkable how many, when you talk to people about leadership, and I've asked this to people and go, how important is it that your employees fear you? Obviously, hopefully a trick question. It's astonishing how many leaders think that people should fear them. That's just not.
It's insane.
That's just not the way, because no one has ever told them how. For most civvies, we talk about the army becoming an officer. 76 weeks of people telling me, like, learning how to be and leading my peers and working out what my style was. In lots of businesses, it's, you're really good at selling, so you can be a sales manager. Well, there's no bridge or transition. There's no leadership. There's nothing like that. Yeah. They also got. If I went into lots of companies and said, like, what is your culture? Like, what do you aspire to be? They wouldn't know. Yeah. And because it hasn't translated down.
And it hasn't got the opportunities, has it? Of
hasn't grown. Yeah. And the companies that really go somewhere, like Google, obviously Google is enormous now, but when it was early, Apple, they knew what they wanted to be. Yeah. And people bought into it. And there's a lot going on now about when we talk about employee wellness, saying, well, actually, we should just pay people more. Yes, lots of jobs, yes, you should, but that's not always an option. Most of the time, and I think this is really undervalued, people want to feel part of something special. And if they feel part of something special, you don't have to pay them more, because they want to turn up, they want to be there. Like, you look at our time in the army, didn't get paid badly, but for the 2 years that I was over in Belfast with what's now one Ranger, I was deployed or abroad or on exercise for about 18 months out of the 24. So a lot more hours than the army paid me, but I loved it. Yeah, I loved it, and it was great,
isn't it? When you actually are driven by passion and good emotions, that becomes more the thing, doesn't it? It reminds you actually that you do it for the love rather than the money.
And that's what we want to give to companies, or not what we want to. That's what we give companies. Yeah. Is that clarity at the top to say, like, this is your culture, these are your values, this is how you need to live them as a company. To that level of how do you hire people into a team? So we work with a company called Spotlight to do personality profiling as well, so that you are hiring the right people into the team to make that balance. Yeah. Because the big issues that we see are recruitment, retention, and just general well-being. Stress and burnout are massive for employees. So at the lower level, it's how do we stop stress and burnout and make you feel great about yourself. At the middle, it's how do you recruit people and make sure they want to be part of the team. And at the top level, it's like, how do you buy into this whole that you love it,
keep it going,
and how do you keep it going when you're growing, when you're suddenly bringing employees. So I'm ranting a bit, thank you for humouring me, but at our level of businesses now, we are all incredibly invested in what we do, because there are, like, I don't know how many people you employ, but it's not more than 10.
Me personally, mine's come right down now.
But it's a couple, so everyone is in, because you get to see people face to face and you get to chat to them. I mean, my business is me at the moment, and our subcontractors, who I can just ring up. I know them all by first name terms. What happens when you're a company that's gone from that initial 20, 30? So you're a Series A startup. You've just done the funding round. You've got 30 people. You're suddenly going up to 100. You're not going to know all those people.
No, you lose the contact.
You will lose that. So how do you make that transition and feel like everyone is part of something when you stop knowing people's names? Yeah. Or when you
And
don't
it's so
get to see them
important,
every
isn't
day.
it? Like
Yeah.
people forget that because and, you know, I'll say it's very hard for these businesses because they don't mean to do that if they really stopped and thought about it, but
Yeah.
they're failing in that process because they're just thinking about the business growth. But actually, I guess what you're trying to say there is you're reminding them that part of the business growth is looking after who you've got.
Yeah. Because if those people want to be there and care about it, they will give you so much value far beyond anything that you're paying them, because they will feel like they care. And they'll tell other people that they care, and the business will be a productive, happy place because people want to be part of it. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, just obviously, you know, to plug where you are and where to like find you if anyone's interested in that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
where
so
can they go?
we're undergoing a bit of a rebrand, but theinsideedgepeople.co.uk, the Inside Edge People on LinkedIn and Instagram. Although we don't do a huge amount on Instagram. Obviously, my co-founder, so my wife Tammy, is a cricketer who talks about it occasionally. And yeah, that's where you'll find us.
Yeah.
And we're happy just to chat. We love it. I would sit down and talk for hours about people, because that's the thing that I loved in the army, is how do you look after people and make them feel special, and that's what we're giving to people, and that's what I want to talk about.
And that is a great reason why you're doing your business as
Yeah.
it is, because that's what your heart is within, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's a Japanese word called ikigai, which is essentially sort of your meaning for life, and you've got to combine something you're good at, something the world needs, something you'll get paid for, and what was the last one? Something you love. And lots of times you start a business, you might have a couple of them, but you don't have all of them. You've got to find something the world needs, and I think people now more than ever need this kind of personalised attention, and I love it. And I think there's work out there. Well, there is work out there.
Well, that's the thing that people are slipping up on, that they're not realising, isn't it? Like, you know, that looking back in your business rather than looking at the, you know, the how do I make more money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I made out earlier on that I've got a killer question, and we'll finish off with this. And I've probably like made you really nervous. I'm tapping my fingers to try and make you even more nervous. No, I like your views on things when I ask you a question, right? What do you think to the new NHS drug?
Oh yeah.
Have you actually seen it?
Yeah. So what is Wegovy? Is I think our version of it.
Yeah.
Semaglutide, I think is the actual technical name for the drug. It might just be another company that makes it. So as with everything, there is nuance to it. It's clinically it works. People lose weight on it because it's an appetite suppressant.
Yeah.
So there are people who will absolutely benefit from it. There are also people that will use it that should probably go down more traditional routes, because it does have some side effects. Again, I'm not a clinician, but I think there are some that come with like sort of vomiting and rashes. I think are some of the side effects. What I would prefer to see, or what I would like to see in tandem, is an element of prevention, so that we don't need to give people drugs to fix something.
Yeah.
And that's the same with lots and lots of lifestyle related conditions, that we go straight to like, what is the drug that we can give you, rather than going like, what is it about culture, society, diet, whatever we're doing that we're leading people to get to that stage.
Yeah.
Because there'll be some people that there are some conditions that it doesn't matter whether you're eating really well, you're going to be in trouble. Fine. But there are lots of people, I think, we use it where we are just not set up as a culture, as a country in the West, wherever you want to go, that are setting people up for failure, so that becomes the solution, rather than how are we preventing people from needing it down the line.
Yeah.
So as with all the things, it's a tool, it's a useful tool, people will benefit from it, but I wouldn't go straight to that, because there are lots of other things you could be doing that will put you in a better place, I think.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Obviously, for the guys who probably are thinking, what the hell are you talking about? I think it was only yesterday, was it, or the day before it was announced?
Yes, there's a limit. I think there's a limited. The NHS has a limited stock because celebrities in Hollywood are using it.
But the way I see this, right, as a little bit of an outline and explanation for it, it's a drug to stop. To help curb like your cravings.
Yeah, it's an appetite suppressant.
Yeah, appetite suppressant, and it's also the drug that's used for people with type 1 diabetes.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's the same drug that's used for Mona mentioned it, didn't she, when she came on? and she's a pharmacist. Like, so it's the same drug that's used for that. Now, I actually watched this video yesterday of NHS saying that they understand that it's there's not much of the drug around,
Yeah.
and it's at low capacity, so they're limiting it to the people they give it to. Now, I get that what they're trying to say is we're fixing a problem there, but I can't help but then just rewind back to the whole start and go, right, before that, why haven't you... I'm not saying they haven't tried, but why are you allowing people... I'm going to say something really harsh now, but it's just the way I think about it. People to continue to be weak-minded on thinking that it's okay to not fix things that they are able to fix over a drug. Because let's be honest, NHS even in it it frustrates me because they even said, we're trying to make sure that people don't think it's a magic pill though. Well, you said it because you know that's what people are going to think. People are going to think that because the people that are desperate, and I'm going to say this, that are desperate to lose weight, but through their own mindset. I know that's not everybody, but there is a section of that we see day in, day out. You're now giving them that opportunity to stay weak-minded and to not fix their... Do you know what I'm trying to say?
And there are many levels to this that we could probably talk about for a long time, that a lot of the NHS is set up. The NHS is to fix you, not to prevent the car crash.
Yeah.
That's how it's always been set up, because that's the way it's always been. And it's very, very good at
that part.
At that part.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the resources to go out and do that preempting bit. So the NHS is only going to do the thing that it does, which is fix you when you're broken. There needs to be a culture-wide change of why are kids less active. Like we know why they're less active, because there aren't as many manual labour jobs in general, and there is an availability of easily consumed calories. But what are we doing to encourage kids to be more active? Not necessarily play sport, but just be more active. What are we doing to encourage better sources of food? Like we've had a sugar tax, but it's still incredible. It's still very, 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 very easy to eat poorly. What are we doing so that actually a piece of beef doesn't cost, with the cost of living crisis, £20, so that actually people go, I'm going to have turkey. Can you even get turkey Twizzlers anymore? But they'll go with turkey Twizzlers because they can afford it. Like, why? What are we doing to address those kind of things as a country? This isn't the NHS, so that actually people go, I can eat well. Because if I went into any supermarket, yes, for me, I'm pretty comfortable with cooking, and I'm economically well enough that I can say, I'm going to buy a chicken, I'm going to buy a load of veg and some potatoes, and I'll cook it because I can afford to use the oven, and I can afford the chicken, and I think that's economically better than going to eat burgers. But if you're not comfortable, you can go and buy a burger for £1. You go and do that. So we need to address that kind of thing, because yes, there is a willpower element, there is a knowledge element to lots of people being overweight or unhealthy, but there are other things that we need to do to make sure you cannot just shout at people and go lose weight, because they're not going to do it. No,
of course.
There are many things we need to address.
For me, it's just frustrating because we're allowing the continuation of, and I'll keep saying like this because it's just fact, but the weak mindset. No, like you say, there's a lot of people in that position through bad health, and that are, let's say, unfortunately in that position. But there is also a hell of a lot of people that are in that position through ill education, through bad surroundings, and all that sort of stuff. And I think one of the reasons it frustrates me is because it's part of our duty and our job of what we do to make people healthy.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, great, you can now get this drug that's just going to cut. And that's not even saying that we don't make our money, because I don't make my money off fat loss people anymore. That's that was my business once upon a time. But at the end of the day, I'm still heavily into the whole mindset of fitness and health and well-being. So that plays a part in that.
Yeah, and it's a separate one with people train to lose weight rather than eat to lose weight, and it comes to that why are we not encouraging people to realise how great it feels to move? My belief behind my training is I never want to have to say no to something because I can't do it. You said, do you want to come and do a strongman medley? And I'd go, you know what, I'm not 105 kilo world champion, I can't lift as much, but I can give it a good go. Or that someone could say, do you want to come and run a marathon? And I can go, slowly, but I can turn up, I can do it. I hate the idea of having to turn down an opportunity to do something fun. So
Yeah.
why aren't we encouraging people to go, you know what, don't train to lose weight, train because it makes you feel great. Go and play
Yeah.
sport, go and play five-a-side, play tennis, do stuff because it makes you feel wonderful, and then eat less. How do we get you to eat less so that you lose, so that that's the weight loss thing? But it's a multifaceted thing that we need to lower all the barriers to entry to being healthy, and at the moment there are too many barriers for people who, as you say, haven't built up that mindset to ignore the barrier. Because you and I I've trained my entire life. Like, I feel if I don't train a day, I feel awful. But if you've never had that, then it's something you don't know. You don't know, and you don't fit it in. And that's what needs to address, is how do we start kids early and give them the opportunities to go and play, to run around, to not sit on a phone or a Xbox, but to go out and play sport. And that comes with funding PE teachers, because I think that's an area that we don't look at. It comes with not selling off football pitches, and it comes with putting more money into community programs. And it might be taking money from the NHS to say, look, this is, if we get people healthier, you don't spend as much down the line, because you're healing different things.
That's as well one of the reasons that frustrates me so much, is because I've got so many stories about so many people, and I can pull them up now and talk to them, you know, and prove the point where they've turned around and gone, I literally can't believe I'm in this position, you know. I've changed my life. There's all sorts of different things. I know people that, you know, had, I always forget which diabetes, 1 or 2 is the one that's reversible. One's the worst, isn't it?
One is what is genetic, or you're born with.
So type 2, you know, how many people have reversed that and, like, do you know what I mean, and now stabilised that, and like, oh my God, I'm now different. But do you know what I mean? There's so many stories, and I think that's one of the reasons that frustrates me the most, because all these are so good and so positive, but they're now not able to be found because of situations like this.
And prevention is so much easier than a cure. For example, if you were going to take someone in to learn how to do pull-ups, if that person is 5'10" and weighs 150 kilos, that person's 5'10" and weighs 70, who's doing them faster?
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same with health. If someone is 16 and about to start becoming overweight, they can still enjoy, they can still have fun, they're not limited. If they're 25, then they're limited, and actually your options as a coach are it's not as fun for them to do stuff. Like, they can't just be like, oh, do you fancy going rock climbing? Because they cannot, but they could have done that at the age of 16. And so prevention is always better. And if we can help, if kids leave school knowing how to cook, knowing how to look after themselves, understanding where they're at, they will be in such a better position down the line than if they leave school and they've got no idea. Because suddenly you're 20, 25, kids, dog, work, life. Like, when I was 18, I used to go in the gym for like 3 hours because I had nothing else that I wanted to do. You're a father. I'm not a father yet, but I will be I hope to be down the line. Life gets in the way. You cannot prioritise yourself in quite the same way. But if you've already set, this is all I need to do to be healthy, not world champion, not right
just
at the
good
top,
standards.
just good standards. But that comes early, and we can't expect young men, young women to do it themselves. They've got to be exposed to the right way of doing stuff at that age, so they know how to do it.
It's true. And I say this a lot, but that's why I'm so on top of my kids about it, you know, because I know that I learnt a lot of wrong things growing up. Do you know what I mean? And that's why it might be the littlest things, but they, you know, I just like to make sure that this is how they know that it goes on.
And it's the example that they see, that they will. I can't imagine you out of shape. Like, in 10 years' time, you're not still competing at a top level, but you'll still be training. Like, Sarah trains. Like, that's what they will see. They come in the gym and they see.
Leah's already got some quads popping.
But it's what you see, and that's when we used to talk about, like,
monkey see monkey doing all that.
When we talk about weak mindset, that is an argument for why people aren't. But if they haven't seen it, if they haven't been exposed to it, if they haven't been given positive examples, they're never going to do it. They're not suddenly going to go, oh, you know, I'm going to do the hard thing if I haven't seen people do it before. We've got to give more of that, and I think it's an investment that the country needs to make for the future. It won't happen straight away. We're not suddenly going to get a nation of athletes. But if we if we don't invest in it, we will have more and more. It will only get harder to do. and we're not cut out for that because there are so many factors in why people are overweight, becoming sort of more unhealthy. I think it's something like, the last stat I could find was the government in 2021, I think they spent 5.5 billion of the NHS budget directly on obesity, not on the other things, not type 2 diabetes, not on the links that now
Just generally the whole,
just obesity.
Yeah.
Like 5.5 billion that could be spent on cancer, on all sorts of other things, on ER, like that. Why is that not being spent on the prevention stuff? With all the other benefits, sorry, I'm ranting now, but with all the other benefits of sport, like if you took that, more football pitches, football's not my sport, but that's what people love, more rugby pitches, more sports pitches, more people trained. One, you get all the benefits of playing sport, which is playing with teams, friendships, not being lonely, getting out and about, fresh air. But you also then don't spend that down the line because they're still playing football. Like that, it baffles me that we can't value that kind of stuff.
The simple stuff, ultimately,
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be complicated. We will spend more on potentially semaglutide, on Wegovy, down the line, than we would have ever spent on just a bit of grass over time. But the grass is a big expenditure up front. The football pitch is a big expenditure up front. We have to start.
They don't see value in later on down the line.
But we've got to start investing in that stuff because it's something. I'm not going to make up stats on a podcast, but you can see the trend of obesity. So diabetes is a great one. It used to, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes because that's when it came into it.
Yeah, and then it's
now called juvenile onset diabetes.
Yeah.
Directly because of how we're living.
Yeah, because it's happening at that point.
Because it's happening earlier and earlier.
Which is sad.
All of the stats on obesity and the ages at which people become obese or overweight are increasing year on year, every single year for like the last 20 years. Well, pretty much since the end of the Second World War, I think. Like that's not a great trend, and it's not about saying to people you cannot be a certain weight, but it's about saying there are healthier ways to live, and that there will be consequences if you choose to live in a certain way.
Yeah. And
that consequence could be loss of opportunity, could be a lower lifespan, could be many other consequences.
I appreciate it. Well, thanks for your intake on
Sorry
that.
about that.
No. But I wanted to ask you because I know that you have a good spin on these things and you think about these things prior to it as well. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing. I know we could talk for another 10 blocks through, but I'm sure we'll do something else in the future as well. Just very quickly, where can people see you? You sort of said earlier on, but where are you? You've got your own stuff as well.
I do, but I'm quite private. So just the insideedgepeople.co.uk or Inside Edge People on LinkedIn.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, I know we will. We'll see a lot more of your business as the future comes on. I look forward to seeing it grow as well. And thanks for the book.
No.
I'll update everybody how far I get in the book. But no, appreciate it, my brother.
Cheers. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, man.